Westworld, listen, my elder brother and I, Robbie, is 2 years older. And as you know, probably maybe, we grew up on TV. And, in Kentucky, in our small town of Henderson, I don't know why, they would show a film so many times that we could memorize them. We knew all the lines. Westworld, like one of them is the greatest story ever told. Come on, how many times have you or your family seen that? Too many. And Westworld was a film that my brother, I don't know about him, but me for sure, I thought it was a TV show because they showed it so many times. I just thought it was a TV show. And I was in love with Yul Brynner because who the hell looked like me? Nobody. Yul Brynner, not even Asian, they find out. Always playing Asians. Did it for me. I believed you, Yul. I was in love with him. And I was in love with this world that Michael Crichton, had never directed before. How about that? He studied medicine. I love this story. A total vanguard, a total auteur who just decides to make this crazy story. And they let him. I think he wrote it, and then they let him direct it. I was like, count me in. This is a dream come true. This is a dream come true. I don't think it had ever happened before that I did a story that I was so much in love with in my career as a costume designer. So I said yes. One of the hardest shows.
You came on after the pilot, though, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, timeline-wise,
okay.
Yes. I came for season 1. However, I'm working with one of the guys who's now like my brother on another thing now. And he reminded me, oddly, just last week, they reshot half the pilot only because they wanted to. And they had the cojones to say that to HBO. They recast someone and they had to shoot around it. And so, we had to remake so much. We had to redesign. And did we keep the characters that were the main characters, the robots that get shot and come back the next day? Yeah, we did. But there was still, the designer for that was brilliant. And yet, what happens on a pilot, through no fault of any costume designer, is you have this much time. The ideas are big, especially in the world of TV, of world building, which is almost every job now, for me anyway. But you don't have the time for forethought to think, oh, wow, after this, we've got to make sure that those costumes can keep going on a show where robots drop dead and you have to be reset every day, overnight. Well, they used antique fabric. There's a shelf life that goes away because we've used it all. And so we had to actually make our own fabric. Printing-wise, weaving-wise, there were hippies involved in upstate New York on looms. Weaving the Man in Black's fabric, we had to hand paint the design. I mean, it was very painstaking. Vegetarian. There are things I have done to skulls and they're remnants of already dead animals that I would never want to do again. But it was a beautiful showpiece and beautiful artwork. And I had amazing people working, another army on Westworld. And it was a seminal moment. Now, did I get crazy calls between 12 and 3 for a 5 a.m. call where I was asked, I don't really want that era of this native culture, this nation. I want something else. Can you do it? And I'm like, yes. And our joke became, and I did. And the joke became there's no saying no in Westworld. And it was 100% true. 100% true. But we learned so much. And we can do anything when we have those jobs to teach us. Not saying no means you're never afraid for the next thing that comes around. That's seemingly impossible. I took the job because Jonah, when I first met him, I interviewed with them separately, which I thought was interesting, right, as a husband and wife. Jonah was the first one, and I fell in love with the idea of working with him because he said, while I am English and American, I grew up going to do service work as a teen, and I went to Appalachia, and I was in charge of fixing houses, and I was hitting on a roof to help repair a roof, and all these letters fell down that were love letters to the older women, I think, who lived there as a young girl. And I just fell in love with the idea that his whole life was kind of fantasy filled. So I'm like, he's going to do a good job. I mean, how can you beat Michael Crichton? That's really hard, right? And then when I met Lisa, I was talking with her, and we're like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, can I say something weird? You kind of look like me. And she's half Taiwanese and half English. And I was like, I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but... And she's brilliant and a lawyer. I mean, come on. And now she's a director and a writer and I think I fell in love with the idea of working with this kind of powerhouse duo of writers. And then their minds are immense, infinite, really. And the thought process of all the stories, season 1, was kind of unfathomable as far as human stories go. But I think I'll do anything for a smart person, really. And then they told me and the production designer and their showrunner, only 3 people. They didn't show us scripts, but I was like, hey, everything was a secret. No one was allowed to have cell phones on set because of people taking pictures of things and selling it or whatever. No one was allowed to have scripts. I forgot which show, but somebody had stolen a page and gave something away. I don't know if it was Westworld pilot or something else. So there were all these extreme rules, right? And I said to Jonah and Lisa, I'm like, hey, I have to know what's happening so I can give you what could be that will be fluid with your story and your plan. Because it's starting to get impossible. I don't know what you need without a story. Now, the most amazing thing about their process is when you leave room for the impossible and you have completely crazy new standards for how you work, it really opens up the mind to create in a different way. And I believe I did beautiful work on that show. Finally, Jonah was like, okay, Lisa, you can tell only 3 people what's going to happen, but it's verbal and they can't take notes. A whole season verbal, okay? So she sat me, the show's production designer, Zach, and Richard, their I think friend of Jonah, and the showrunner in one room, no note taking, nothing, and gave us the mana. She did verbally, and I was like, oh my God, and no scripts. How do you do continuity even on set? And everyone was begging me, but I couldn't tell them anything or I would get shot, right? It's like, the thing you sign that says, if anything happens, we'll know where the info came from, right? A bird will sing and it's you. So it was weird. It was crazy and beautiful. And I'm happy you saw that trajectory in Jimmy, because it was a hard thing to keep. It was a hard thing to keep, especially on set. Who are the people next to the actors? Costume designers, hair, makeup, and actors have questions. And the funny thing was, there was a whole, everyone thought they had the answer by putting pieces together, but they all had a different answer. That's how the human mind works. It was kind of a social experiment, really, I think, in us pretending to be AI to do the right thinking. But I think it was good. I've been told that season was the best, and not only visually. I don't ever watch something after I'm done because I'm too controlling, and I'll think oh God, why didn't they? But yeah, I know that the crew said, like, people would get mad if they were only hired for a short period of time, like Adrian Dyers or Taylors, which we had many, and they would get so mad when we told them, oh, I'm so sorry, tomorrow's your last day, we can't afford to keep you on. They would get mad because I think it was such a playground, right, of a different world to be in, even off the page.